Closing arguments for the Kyle Rittenhouse trial took place today. We're gonna get to some video of a portion of the closing argument coming from the defense in just a moment. But it's worth talking about some of the updates leading up to the closing arguments, including the fact that the judge in this case, Judge Schroeder, has decided to dismiss the one charge that Kyle Rittenhouse confessed to being guilty of on the stand, and that was being in possession of a weapon that at first was thought to be an illegal weapon. But it turns out that because of how Wisconsin has written its gun laws, there's a loophole that Rittenhouse was able to take advantage of. And in this case, the judge has decided to drop that charge. So Judge Bruce Schroeder dismissed one count of illegal possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. The misdemeanor, punishable by up to 9 years in jail, was considered one of the stronger counts against Rittenhouse. No one disputes he was 17 last year when he walked the streets of Kenosha armed with an AR-15 style weapon. Now, the defense in this case successfully argued that it was actually legal for Rittenhouse to be in possession of that gun, of that rifle, because it was actually a weapon that was longer. The barrel was longer than 16 inches. The judge cited an exception within the law dealing with the age of the defendant, the length of the barrel, and hunting for dismissing that count. Now, I want to be clear that during his testimony, Kyle Rittenhouse was specifically asked whether he purchased that weapon for hunting, and he said no. He said that he bought it for protection and also because he thought it looked cool, okay? But nonetheless, the law in Wisconsin is written in such a way that the judge was willing and able to drop this charge. For the statute to apply, the defendant had to also violate a hunting regulation that only applied to people under 16 years old. The defense discovered what was essentially an error in the legislation, that Kyle Rittenhouse cannot violate a law that only applies to someone under 16. So there was a moment where the judge addressed this. I want to just quickly go to that video and then open it up for discussion.
If the barrel length is less than 16 inches, or an overall length less than 26 inches, then I'll deny the motion. If it does not meet those specifications, then this defense motion will be granted.
We are not disputing that the barrel length is appropriate.
Isn't legal?
It is not a short-barreled shotgun or a short-barreled rifle. Yes.
Either by barrel or by overall length?
Correct.
All right, and then count 6 is dismissed.
So that charge has been dismissed. There was a previous charge regarding the curfew. The judge had also dismissed that charge as well. So now really the only issue for Kyle Rittenhouse is whether or not the jury finds him guilty of intentional manslaughter or reckless unintentional manslaughter in one of the shootings. So we'll see how it plays out, but the evidence did show that he had a reasonable belief that he was under an imminent threat, which is why he used his weapon. I think it's gonna be incredibly difficult for the jury to deliberate and decide that he did not use the weapon in self-defense, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's called a loophole, all right? So they found something in the law that says, oh yeah, well, they meant for it to apply for this, but they wrote it in a way that where it doesn't. And so of course the right wing will take this and go, that's it, we're justified, bring weapons to every protest. No, it depends on the state and how they wrote the damn law. In this case, Wisconsin wrote it poorly. It was supposed to apply for hunting when you're going with your family, that's what it appears. And in this case, he was not going hunting with his family unless they were going to hunt black people and left-wingers and kill them, which is kind of what it turned out to be. So he'll win on a technicality on this, but did he buy a gun when he was too young? Yes. Was he going to use it for hunting? No. So by all accounts, if they'd written the law right, he would have been guilty of that. So I'm not saying put him in jail for it. It is what it is. They wrote the law wrong, right? And we believe in applying the law as it is, okay? But it's nothing to celebrate if you're a right winger. Like, yes, loophole, right? And
are you kidding me? Of course they're going to celebrate.
Of course,
they don't want any gun laws, so it's actually perfect for them. No, but I mean, obviously there's a flaw in the way the law was written. So, if there's another issue, if there are protests and it results in the kind of violence that we saw in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I am concerned about that. Now, I mean, I've been on the record about gun laws. I think we should have gun legislation, gun regulations that make sense. In this case, it doesn't make sense. I mean, he just clearly stated on the stand that he did not buy the weapon for hunting purposes, and he was 17 years old at the time. But again, that loophole is there, and the defense did what the defense is supposed to do, take advantage of the fact that loophole exists.
Yeah, look, guys, the rubber's gonna hit the road, and I hope it never happens, but we're headed in that direction. When finally, at some point, the left wing goes, all right, we're bringing weapons to protest too, okay? And it partly started happening here. And by the way, that's part of the reason why we had the violence, right? So there was other people in the crowd with guns. And so now everybody's got guns, and the right wing, every time they win, whether it's on a loophole or anything else, they think, yes, we get to kill left wingers, we get to kill them. We bring them the guns in and then go, oh my God, somebody threw a plastic bag at me. I must murder them. Oh, look, there's a guy with a skateboard. He hit me with a skateboard. I will now murder him. Regular people don't kill people that hit them with skateboards. They feel bad about it. Like, oh, that seems like overreaction. Right wingers think perfect excuse to murder them. All right, let's keep going with this totally ridiculous trial now. That's a sham. Although I will say the prosecution did a good job in closing argument, which I'll tell you about in a second.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen the entirety of their closing argument. But the prosecution did bungle their case in other moments. I will be clear about that. But for me, the biggest issue was the judge's conduct, because the judge, I mean, he just couldn't help himself. There were so many moments where he would engage in these rants that he really had no business engaging in. A good example, by the way, of his own personal ignorance had to do with a piece of evidence that the defense had called into question. So they were debating about the nature of the evidence shown by the prosecution. Schroeder seemed to suggest that zooming into a video or images alters the image itself. So let me give you some background on this. Schroeder stated it was up to the prosecution to prove that zooming on a video in with an iPad doesn't alter or manipulate the footage. Why? Well, the defense argued this, which is not true, okay? But this is what the defense argued. iPads, which are made by Apple, have artificial intelligence in them and allow things to be viewed through 3 dimensions or logarithms. The defense said as part of its objection, adding that the iPad uses artificial intelligence or their either logarithms or logarithms, yeah, to create what they believe is happening. So this isn't actually enhanced video, they argued. This is Apple's iPad programming, creating what it thinks is there, not what's necessarily there or what necessarily is there, right?
Okay,
which is not true. That's absolutely not true. That's what the defense argued. At that point, Judge Schroeder looks at the prosecution and says, we're gonna need you to find an expert witness to testify on this in the next 20 minutes. Okay.
It's absurd. And the defense was doing 2 things basically. One, taking advantage of a fumbling old man who clearly doesn't know anything about technology. They're like, sir, if you turn off the light switch, it actually means turning it on. What? I can't tell. Right, so they got Mr. Magoo as a judge. So they're like, hey, zooming in is somehow changes the image. And they know that this schmuck can't figure that out. The second thing is the judge can't wait to rule in their direction. All they gotta do is give him a fig leaf, even the smallest little thing. And he's like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Zooming in, illegal. Prove it's not illegal in 20 minutes. Oh, you can't. Oh, and it was over lunch. I got you.
Okay, so to really buttress and reinforce Cenk's point here, we gotta go to the video of Judge Schroeder just rambling on about what he experiences on his own device, which, if you notice, is not an iPad and is also not even an Apple product. It's a Samsung product. Nonetheless, here he goes.
When I get messages from some of my friends, my few remaining friends, they come as texts, and then they start belittling me or whatever in one way or another, and it can be quite lengthy. The exchange that's going on between them and us, but they're entertaining, And so I don't know how to save text messages. I haven't figured that out, and I haven't, I have a lot of things that I'm doing, so that's a low priority for me to figure out how to save a text message. And I don't want to leave them on my phone forever. I want it off so that it's clean, so when I look at it, I'm looking just at the fresh stuff. So then I do a screenshot of it, and I email it to myself to save it. But I found, to my distress, that some of them are pretty long, and they show up in my email like this, like a little ribbon down the center of the page. Some of them are even smaller than this. Well, then I go to open them up, and it's just a blur. You were talking the other day, one of you two, about it's just like a cell phone where you can expand a picture and make it bigger. Well, it's not making it any bigger. It's making it bigger, but it's nothing but a blur.
Bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? What was that? What does that have anything to do with what the defense, what the defense is arguing here? Let me just get into details and then Cenk, go off. So,
okay, can I just say though, sometimes I imitate people and you think I'm exaggerating, and obviously I'm exaggerating to a degree. But there, in that case, was I really exaggerating?
No, you weren't. Like that was one of the rare instances where your commentary was actually completely in line with reality.
Mr. Magoo.
Look, again, let me reiterate. The defense actually did a really great job in this case, okay? The judge, if he has a bias, and it seems like he does, in favor of Rittenhouse, could have just shut his mouth and it would have played out the way he wanted it to play. But he can't help himself. So none of what he said in that video is useful in support of the defense's objection about iPad pinch to zoom. A Galaxy S20 runs Google's Android operating system with various Samsung customizations, while the defense's specific objections were about Apple and its programming, right, on the iPad. So from the start, whatever a Samsung phone is doing is not relevant to the objection about how an Apple device works. Secondly, the defense's objection is about those Apple logarithms adding data to an image such that it can be viewed in 3 dimensions or recreate what is not there. Here, Judge Schroeder's phone is plainly not adding any data to the image. It just remains blurry because he's zooming in so much.
We don't have to bother disproving it. The guy's Mr. Magoo. He's my few remaining friends belittle me all the time. Well, we can see why.
Dude,
Judge Schroeder.
He's a judge.
Right?
This guy is.
And what I told you from day one when this guy started giving these weirdo speeches, this guy's auditioning for Judge Judy / Fox News. In the old days, people would get sick contracts if they got daytime shows. You know how much money Judge Judy made? She made something like $40 million a year. Okay, so she's enormously wealthy. So as soon as the camera started rolling, this guy's like, well, here I am, let me tell you, okay? And he started making all these crazy rulings and putting on a show, but he's a befuddled old man and he's a giant right winger. It's super obvious. And so none of these make any sense, but the right winger are like, yeah, Mr. Magoo, Judge Magoo, you're killing it. And he's like, yes, I finally have people who respect me.
All right, so I wanted to give you guys just one moment from the defense's closing statements, closing arguments, because I don't know why this was mentioned. I don't think that this even helps the defense in this case, but it is telling, right? Not just about the defense, but more importantly, the kind of mentality we have in this country in regard to gun culture and gun violence. Let's watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, other people in this community have shot somebody 7 times, and it's been found to be okay. And my client did it 4 times in 3/4 of a second to protect his life from Mr. Rosenbaum.
That was the weakest argument ever. What does it matter how many times they shot the gun? What's being called into question is whether or not he used that weapon in self-defense, right? So if others have shot their guns 7 times and were found not guilty of intentional manslaughter because there was evidence to show that they acted in self-defense, then they acted in self-defense. They can legally do that. Like the number of shots or the amount of time that it took for them to fire those shots doesn't matter. Like that was a weird thing to bring up.
So the prosecution did a good job, in my opinion, with this argument at the end. they said, what about the victim's right to self-defense? So this guy comes in, brandishes a weapon, and they think he's an active shooter, and one of them defends himself with a skateboard, for example, right? And so are we going to tell society, in essence, you can only defend yourself if you have a weapon that could kill other people, right? So you can't defend yourself with a skateboard, but you can with a gun. And so does that mean that the only self-defense that counts is with a gun? It's funny because it's literally the question I asked a right-winger that had come on our current TV show about almost 10 years ago now with the Trayvon Martin situation, where he said, George Zimmerman has a right to murder him with a weapon because he was worried he was gonna get hit with the Skittles. Okay, and I said, well, how about Trayvon Martin's defense? When the guy approaches him with a weapon, can he not fend him off with his arms, or does that mean he automatically gets murdered? And the guy said, no. Self-defense is only if you have a gun.
Yeah, look, I know
that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I just want you to be 100% clear, because no one made the argument that Zimmerman was worried for his life because of the Skittles. It was because they had gotten into a physical altercation at that point. I agree with you 100%, right? Trayvon Martin was being pursued by George Zimmerman after the 911 dispatcher told him on multiple occasions, stop following him, don't follow him.
And
right?
we don't have to clarify that Skittles is not what Trayvon Martin was using, okay? But for the right wing, I get it.
No, you do,
I know, but they're morons. We don't have to address them. Oh no, it wasn't with Skittles, Cenk. He was actually trying to punch him when he was about to get murdered. I know, you guys are idiots. So I don't have to bother explaining every little detail to you, okay? So in terms of what happened with Trayvon Martin, look, the precedent that's being set and why this case is really important, the Rittenhouse case, is they're setting the stage for massive violence throughout the country. They're saying we can go up to you with weapons nonstop, and if you ever say, hey, don't shoot me, and you defend yourself in any way, we get to murder you. We just get to murder you, right? And so what does that do? Now the gun manufacturers are thrilled with this development. They're like, well, you can't use your hands, you can't use a skateboard, you can't use Skittles, you can't use a plastic bag, you can't use anything to defend yourself. The only thing you can defend yourself with is a gun. Go kill each other, go kill each other, go kill each other as soon as you can. And then that way you'll buy even more guns, right? So the NRA is thrilled, the gun manufacturers are thrilled, the right wing is thrilled because they love death and murder. And they love are you kidding me, this Rittenhouse thing? Why are they defending him? Because of loopholes? They're not defending him because of loopholes and they studied Wisconsin law and they're like, measure the barrel of the gun. No, they're defending him because this is their wet dream. I get to go into the middle of a left-wing protest with a weapon, and if anyone even looks at me sideways or throw a plastic bag at me or anything like that, I kill them all, and then some right-wing judge lets me off. That's your dream, right wing. You know it. That's why you treat Rittenhouse as a hero. And I'm tired of debating it with you guys. There's no debate. You didn't think he was actually doing self-defense when he went there in the first place. Defense of what? It's not even his own state. He went there to kill left-wingers if he had the opportunity. And that's what happened, and you all know it, and that's why you celebrate him. So please stop me with it. Stop.
He used to work there, Cenk. He used to work there. So since he used to work there,
sure.
Look, I saw protests going down in my own neighborhood, in my own community, and I get it, right? Like for some people, it's incredibly scary. But I knew better than to put myself in any type of situation that could lead to increased violence. Like, look, what we saw during those protests in the summer was a very intentional response by right-wingers to protesters who were trying to change the way policing is done in this country. They didn't need to be there. They intentionally went out of their way to be there. And every time they showed up, oh wow, what a surprise. It would escalate to violence. So I hear what you're saying. It is what it is. And honestly, I don't know what the answer is, because you're right.
There's no answer.
There is no answer.
Because our system lets them off nonstop. And what I'm afraid of, not what I'm looking forward to, this is super important. This is a disaster for this country. What I'm afraid of is at some point the left wing's gonna get tired and go, God damn it, we're bringing weapons too. And we're gonna bring a lot of weapons. You bring your weapons, we bring our weapons. Because it turns out if we don't have a gun, you murder us. And the system lets you off every time. Every time. Zimmerman's off, Rittenhouse is gonna get off. So now, at some point, it's gonna be somebody. It's gonna be Antifa, it's gonna be somebody who says, all right then, you bring a gun, I'm bringing a goddamn Uzi, okay? And the next guy's gonna say, I'm bringing an RPG. If you have lawlessness, and that is what this is creating, total lawlessness. People are gonna take the law into their own hands, and we're gonna have massive bloodshed in the country. Mark my words, and I hope to God of all my predictions that this one is the most wrong. But it ain't gonna be wrong, because it's so, okay, so according to this idiotic situation we have in America now, so if you're a left-winger, you can walk into a right-wing protest with hand grenades and be like, what, go ahead, throw something at me. Look at me weird, have your Skittles, you got your iced tea, oh boom, self-defense. Oh, look at that, right? I don't want anybody doing that. That's a terrible idea. And yet, here we go. Every time you let one of these sons of bitches off, the right wing thinks we get to kill them, and that's their dream.
It is interesting though, because on one hand, you have the right wing constantly talking about a civil war, the need for a civil war. They salivate over the thought of a civil war. And then they try to engage in their version of a civil war. And as soon as one of them actually might face consequences for it, no, it was self-defense. Well, which one was it? Did you guys want a civil war, which you guys like incessantly talk about on all of your shows? Or was that really, just a young man who cares so deeply about this community and wanted to clean graffiti? Anyway, it is what it is. Look, again, there's enough evidence, in my opinion, for him to fight off the intentional manslaughter charges. So, but yeah, I am worried about what this means for the future, especially since I have no doubt that there will be more protests in the future. And if this is the kind of outcome that protesters are gonna see, they're gonna wanna arm themselves as well. You're right about that.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.